Democrats spent $63 million to support the primary runs of the worst, most unelectable Republicans over the most thoughtful and appropriate ones. Then when the bad guys ran, the ones they financed, the Democrats ran vigorous campaigns saying just how bad those candidates were.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show, coming to you twice monthly from Washington, D.C. Hello, I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of 225 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, and Financing the Flames, as well as other books. This is a show for opinion makers and decision makers, not mass clicks. And if you like our show's content, spread the word throughout your networks. Subscribe for free alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Today's episode is made possible and sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the historic IBM and the Holocaust audiobook, narrated by me and just re-released at Amazon and audible.com and wherever audiobooks are found, and co-sponsored by members of the Encino Jewish community. Plus, the episode is also co-sponsored by Betty in Cincinnati. Thanks, Betty. And additionally co-sponsored by Phyllis in Jerusalem in honor of her wonderful grandson, Freer, and her son-in-law, Gadi's birthday, and by viewers like you. If you would like to honor someone with a sponsorship, contact us. That said, remember, I only speak for myself and for history, and the same goes for my guests. Today, we welcome viewers from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the Villages, Newton, Massachusetts, Chicago, and Tampa Bay. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from our usuals: Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Austria. How nice. Hungary, Poland, Holland, Sweden, France, Italy, Spain, our friends in Japan at the Imperial Hotel, Great Britain, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and Israel, plus other countries. If you have a question, place one short sentence in Zoom's QA feature. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast growing and enjoying many scores of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world, seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present, very, very tense, and a future still uncertain, very uncertain. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. We'll get to our latest election coverage of the season with the Ballot Boys. We call it electoral jitters for a reason. But first, a few minutes of preliminaries. At the Edwin Black Show and our companion YouTube site, we have just released more compelling and hard-hitting episodes. First, our intrepid reveal, Bad Company, naming the names and shaming the shames on the nation's most criminal, corrupt, and or incompetent corporations. Then our upending and revelatory episode, Canada Crumbling, detailing the dismantling of democracy just north of the border. All episodes are edited with gripping music and imagery. They're keepers to see and to share. Get them at theedwinblackshow.com or our YouTube channel. My appearance tour continues. I appear next in Congress to lead the global commemoration of the massacres of October 7 and how they changed this world and continue to change us all. Details at www.rememberoct07.com. That's www.rememberoct07.com. That's October7.com. The next day, I join Empower You of Cincinnati to discuss national affairs and national fears. Later this year, I'll be returning to Palm Beach and San Diego. Find all of my appearances at edwinblack.com/events and let us meet up in your city. Until we meet, man up. Finally, I remind my viewers of a terrible website publishing the ghoulish videos from October 7th. This site contains just some of the war crime documentation Israel will need for its prosecutions after the war. See it at Hamas-massacre.net before the deniers win their war of denial. Now, before we get to our main topic, electoral jitters, our short reports today return to our recurring coverage here at the Edwin Black Show. Start with the unexpected rapid collapse of Canada's idyllic democracy. Here with the latest Canada crumbles is our resident privacy guru, Sharon Polsky in Calgary. Sharon, we get the daily reports. Please share 3 of the most recent and worrisome crumbles in Canada. Take the camera, Sharon.
Well, Edwin, you know I travel across Canada and elsewhere quite a bit. And a few days ago, I had to be in Vancouver on Canada's west coast. And traffic there can be worse than Los Angeles traffic. So driving through downtown's east side was actually the quickest route. It's a very small area, quite compact, just a few blocks, where the residents really are a testament to the resilience of people able to survive the harshest of lives. People are living on the street with their worldly possessions in a heap on the sidewalk. If they're lucky, it's piled in a shopping cart. And really, with traffic, it was slow going, so I had an opportunity to watch. There is an entire socioeconomic system that's developed there with goods and hardcore drugs being traded and used in broad daylight. Governments across the country and social justice warriors across the country also are rightfully concerned about the addiction and the mental health issues, particularly in the country's capital of fentanyl deaths, the province of British Columbia. The warm Pacific breezes make it relatively easy to survive an open-air existence, and the government there does its part to help people addicted to hard drugs. One of the programs endorsed by the federal government to make illegal drugs legal in certain circumstances, it provides what they call safe supply and safe injection sites. These are places where people can get illegal hardcore drugs for free and have medical supervision on hand to intervene if they overdose. And those programs have become so well entrenched that some hospitals now provide crack pipes and cocaine snorting kits for free from vending machines at the hospital's emergency entrance. There's one family in British Columbia, it's a sad, sad case. They are crediting the Safe Supply program for their 13-year-old daughter's death. She was an addict from at least 12 years old, probably a little bit before, and she refused treatment for addiction and for her underlying mental health problems. And without her consent, she legally could not be detained for treatment. Her parents are responsible for her as a minor, but they do not have authority to say, put her in care. So while the girl was too young to buy an alcoholic drink or to buy a pack of cigarettes and too young to legally buy cannabis in a government-approved cannabis store, she could get safe supply needles, naloxone kits, and pamphlets with information on how to use safely. It's bizarre. Meantime, we have another federal by-election coming up on Monday, this time in a Montreal area riding where Liberal candidates have chosen to not have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's picture on campaign posters. It's quite customary to have the leader of your party, the Prime Minister, if you're in the party that is governing. They've chosen not to. Yet we do have at least one NDP party candidate who's got a campaign pamphlet on which his face smiles at you from in front of a Palestine flag that occupies the entire background. It's telling to see the impact that current government focus on welcoming asylum seekers is having, with more than 1 million newcomers a year causing social, housing, and economic impacts that are reaching crisis proportions in many places across the country. And it's also telling that there's one federal tax department employee, just federal, never mind the provincial tax department employees, for every 700 Canadians. Compare that to one IRS employee for every 4,000 Americans. In Canada, the continuous focus on green tech and the escalating carbon taxes is interesting, especially now that automakers are abandoning electric vehicle production, and the Canadian government has followed the US example and imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. Predictably, though, declining customer interest in EVs is having an impact on some of the foreign companies that put their hands up to receive some very generous federal government handouts. A year ago, a Swedish company, Northvolt, agreed with a couple different levels of government here to build a plant in Canada to make batteries for electric vehicles. Almost a year later, yesterday, Northvolt announced it will be delaying those plans. There's no mention of what happened to the $2.7 billion of taxpayer money that the company has received. Ford, another beneficiary of our government's largesse, $590 million in taxpayer dollars committed to Ford in the form of a subsidy partnership to be paid out in a few years. And now that Ford is completely shifting away from EVs, its plans to build a large Super Duty truck have taken precedence over building a plant that they were going to convert into an all-electric vehicle plant. What happens to the subsidies is anyone's guess, as Canadians' concerns really are going into overdrive about these and many other issues.
So sad to hear the continuing bad news. I made some notes. First of all, I see you're complaining about of dollars for chargers. We spent $8 billion here, and we got 8 chargers out of it, and 5 of them are not really working. So we understand your pain. I did make some notes about the drug use. Are you telling me that I can walk up to a hospital in Canada, see a vending machine, and get crack pipes and instructions on how to use the crack pipes and all of that?
Not everywhere across Canada, but yes, in some locations. Nanaimo, British Columbia is one in particular. Nanaimo is very interesting. I was there. Nanaimo, a little bit north, about 30 miles north, is the 2 towns of Courtenay and Comox. I had an education there one day. I had to go to the bathroom. And I was in a major supermarket, a grocery store, asked where it is. The woman pointed me. So I went, and then I came back to the customer service, and I said, why is there black lights in the bathroom? I could hardly see anything. She said, drug users. And I didn't know what she was talking about. I said, please educate me. What are you talking about? She said, with black light, it's hard for addicts to see their veins to be able to shoot up in the bathroom. Oh, and it also highlights if there's blood splatters, whether on the toilet seat or a countertop.
Did you see the University of Toronto, where Jews were physically prevented from entering the campus, either to walk in or on bicycle? Did you see that video?
Oh, yeah, I did. And that sort of thing is going on all over the place. It's reprehensible as people, there's Muslims in Canada. By all means, exercise your charter right to freedom of expression and freedom of association and freedom of religious thought. You have houses of worship, by all means. But they're not doing that. They are occupying entire downtown streets and intersections to pray. And there are charges on the books where if I stand in the middle of traffic, if I stop my car in the middle of traffic, I am impeding the flow of traffic. I could get a ticket. But I don't know why. Apparently, the police in places that this is going on are choosing to not lay charges most of the time. So it sends a very, very peculiar signal.
And you are still aware of people Jewish people and non-Jewish people who are getting ready to pack their bags and get the heck out of Canada. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Nothing's changed. They keep scrambling, looking for a place to go to, and the choices are being more and more restricted just by what's going on. And there's a lot of Jewish people and non-Jewish people in Canada who are looking elsewhere and saying, even if I go there, I'm not going to feel safe. From what I see in the media and people I know who live there, who have traveled there, I visited, and they just don't feel safe. Japan, I was there a year ago and I'll be going back in a few weeks, is really the one place where they have very little tolerance for criminal activity and criminal conduct. And when I was there, I have never felt safer anywhere.
And that's what they say about Hungary and Poland. Thank you, Sharon. Stick around. We'll talk to you later. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have to make time for the China threat. It's another recurring theme here. This threat is simply rising too far, too fast, and too close to ignore. Joining us from Virginia is security analyst Clare Lopez. Clare, you have been reviewing the daily expansion of the China threat here and overseas. And I understand you've been working with Christine, one of our producers. It's hard to do so, but can you narrow it down and tell us some of the most worrisome developments? Take it, Clare.
Thanks, Ed. Very glad to be with you and the group today on the show. We are facing a people's war from the Chinese Communist Party. This is unrestricted warfare. Let's begin with the way that the Chinese Communist Party and its intelligence service, the Ministry of State Security, have penetrated every single sector of American society, from academia to business on Wall Street, entertainment, Hollywood, government at every level, media, social media, public health, sports. This is Peter Schweizer's elite capture. And it's not just traditional spies that are looking to steal secrets or intellectual property, but rather agents of influence, which in fact could be at least as dangerous. Agents of influence whose purpose is to control and shift national and other levels of policy across a spectrum to the advantage of China. We would next move to the massive Chinese military presence. Yes, military presence inside the United States, including the special battalion called Jungle Tigers, which have flowed across our southern border wide open. The numbers vary, but at least 10 to 15,000 Chinese military are inside the United States right now, preparing and waiting for orders. This is in addition to the Chinese diplomatic presence, embassy, UN mission, 4 consulates, and it's undiplomatic. It's not accredited presence at what they call police stations and separately special service stations. The U.S. unfortunately seems to have absolutely zero national security consciousness or counterintelligence awareness to defend us from all of this. I would next mention the CCP PLA offensive biological weapons program. It's decades old, but from whence the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Add into that the chemical weapon assault of fentanyl coming across our southern border, again wide open. That's an attack that is killing 100,000 Americans at least every year without deploying a single tank, troop, ship, or plane. Hundreds of thousands of dead Americans. Let me finish with one more, and that would be that between now and January of 2025, I think is a very dangerous window of time for all of us under the Chinese Communist Party threat. I think it's very possible that China will use its massive U.S. presence I've just briefly outlined, and couple that with what I consider to be the command and control military presence on Cuba to hit us in this window of time, to hit us with cyber and possibly kinetic attacks. Remember, we have allowed Chinese components inside every element of our critical national security, including the electric grid, including inside of high voltage electric transformers, including that in the area of southern Manhattan. Can you imagine? And these can be remotely activated or deactivated by artificial intelligence. So enough for now, but we can drill down into more detail in shows to come.
Well, that's pretty awful, Claire. And you hit just some of the high points, but there were so many. What happened to the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, a couple of days ago?
Well, her apparently deputy chief of staff was outed as or at least indicted and accused of being an agent for the Chinese Communist Party, together with her husband as well.
Well, and this was her, like, one of her closest aides, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Now,
Deputy chief of staff.
Now, do you think that there's a chance that there'll be a move on Taiwan before January 20th?
Yes, I do think so. The Chinese Communist Party, PLA, People's Liberation Army, have been practicing blockade maneuvers for months now already. And it's indisputable that the Chinese Communist Party rulers see our current leadership, or lack thereof, nobody really knows who's in charge at the White House, as their chance, as their perhaps closing window of opportunity should former President Donald Trump be reelected.
Well, you've hit on the correct strategy. They don't intend to invade first. What they first intend to do is blockade Taiwan. And actually, since I'm aware of their internal strategies, they won't actually go for the main island of Taiwan first. There are some tiny Taiwanese islands just a few minutes away from the China coast. They'll grab those first, then they'll move to the major island, and then they'll move to the Philippines to block any U.S. action and or resupply. It's a problem. We're going to stay on it, and I know that you're coming back in future shows to help us out. Stick around. I'll be talking to you soon. Now let's turn for a moment to Israel's courageous multi-front war against Hamas and other Iranian surrogates. First, an American female protester was inadvertently shot by the IDF on the West Bank. She was a member of the International Solidarity Movement, which continuously agitates, antagonizes, and provokes Israeli soldiers, hoping to catch a reaction on camera. I don't know about this individual who was shot, and I'm sorry she perished. But to the group she was part of, they specialize in nose-to-nose insults and provocations of Israeli boys and girls in the IDF trying to keep order. They can insult their mothers, their Judaism, their families, anything to provoke these kids. I was the first to investigate this shadowy group, the ISM. You can read about it in a chapter of my book, Financing the Flames. Next, in Gaza, Israel bombed an UNRWA facility serving as a command center for Hamas killers. The UN immediately cried that 9 innocent UNRWA relief workers have been killed. Innocent, right? Well, here are the 9 innocent UN relief workers. Let's name them. 1. Asar Karadia, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing and a member of the Internal Security Force. 2. Mohammed Adnan Abu Zaid, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing who has been responsible for launching mortars at IDF troops and across to the state of Israel. He previously served as an operative in Hamas's naval forces while simultaneously staying as an UNRWA employee. Number 3, Bassem Majid Shaheen, the head of a terrorist cell in Hamas's military wing who actually took part in the October 7th massacre. Number 4, Ammar al-Jadili, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing and internal security forces. Number 5, Akram Sabr al-Ghaladi, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing and a member of their official internal security forces. Number 6, Mohammed Isa Abu Amir, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing, and once again, an actual killer who took part in the October 7th massacre. Number 7, Sharif Salam, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing. They didn't think I'd get these names. Number 8, Yasser Ibrahim Abu Sharar, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing and an operative in Hamas's emergency bureau in Nusrat, again simultaneously employed as an UNRWA relief worker with the UN. Number 9, Ayad Matar, a terrorist in Hamas's military wing, and yes, once again, simultaneously an UNRWA employee. Israel is careful, it does make mistakes, but it is fighting a Nazi-style society that lives and breathes cradle-to-grave terrorism with virtually no innocent civilians walking the ground, and virtually every structure is connected to the Hamas military tunnel system or its ground-based assault systems, which makes them all legitimate military targets under international law and common sense. Remember, 750 kilometers of terror tunnels and not one bomb shelter. Turning to the evacuated northern front, Israel just scored a major victory with a raid deep into Syria, which is hosting Iranian-sponsored attack forces and missile depots. It can now be reported that last Sunday night, Israel aircraft struck all the roads near the city of Masyaf, leading to a strategic building. That building was the Iranian-controlled operation known as the Scientific Study and Research Center, which produces the drones, precision missiles, and some of the chemical weapons that Lebanon is planning to use against Israel. With the roads blocked by fighter jet bombing, Syrian troops could not approach that building. And just then, a pair of Israeli Apache helicopters zoomed in low while under fire. These helicopters did not land, but instead commandos rappelled down to the facility, scooped up its documents, and then destroyed the entire operation, and in the process took 2 Iranian prisoners. This info was just released a few hours ago. It's important not only for its military feat, but because every day Israel is destroying key Hezbollah rocket depots, supply centers, and manufacturing facilities. The mumbling everywhere is that Israel will have so reduced the hundreds of thousands of Hezbollah rocket stores that the long-anticipated Israel attack against Hezbollah in Lebanon is just days away. You may see it before we even release the edited version of this video in a few weeks. It could come in the twinkling of an eye. Once Israel neutralizes Hezbollah or pushes them back north of the Litani River, the next step is Iran. We have been expecting this moment. The top Iran nuke watchdog, the Institute for Science and International Security, as well as experts for the International Atomic Energy Agency, all declared that Iran had accumulated so much HEU, that's highly enriched uranium, weapons grade. It only needed 7 days to assemble 9 nuclear bombs. The Iranian design, which I first revealed some years back, is a dual hemisphered R-265 shock generator laced with 5mm channels filled with PETN, which will explode inward with extreme microsecond precision to trigger the pulse-absorbing exploding bridge wire fuse, which will ignite the neutron initiator and shoot a stray neutron into the spheroidal warhead, setting off the nuclear chain reaction and the resulting mushroom cloud. It must detonate about 550 feet above ground, and it can be delivered in the nose cone of a Shahab-3 missile or from one of Iran's mysterious floating attack vessels or from a container ship in the Mediterranean. That's why 1/3 of America's naval fleet is positioned around Israel and around Iran, and that's why the State Department is now warning Iran that if it attacks Israel as it intends to, the retaliation will be, get this, cataclysmic. Yes, that is the word they're using. Cataclysmic. They're not saying proportional, they're not saying measured, they're saying cataclysmic. And that's because they know Israel has its own non-existent armada of non-existent nuclear weapons in those non-existent caves south of Tel Aviv, aboard those untrackable Dolphin submarines, and also in aircraft and in certain other non-existent places. Here to join me on the Iran nuke question is Clare Lopez again. Clare, what do you know about Iran? Do they have them or do they not?
First, a matter of definition. For whatever reason, there is sort of an international convention that does not call it a nuclear weapon until the warheads are actually attached to the nose cones of the missiles. Therefore, even though, in my opinion, my judgment, Iran has been building warheads for a long time. I think they probably have at least a small handful, let's say 5, 7, 8 of them or so, but they're not yet maybe attached to those nose cones of the missiles. But I think that Israel, with its excellent intelligence inside of the Iranian regime, inside of the Iranian nuclear weapons program, I personally think that they're probably working with the Iranian resistance group, the Mujahideen Khalq. The Israelis, will probably know the point at which the Iranians may decide to attach warheads to missiles. At that point, Israel's going to have to make a decision about anticipatory self-defense justified under international law since the 1600s and Ugo Grotius. But that's a very serious decision they'll have to confront at that point, which may be approaching sooner than we think.
Yeah, that's 1656, if we want to be accurate on when that first tenet of international law was espoused. But you're quite correct that these are not only are these unassembled nuclear bombs, but basically they have the components ready to go. The HEU is now at 90, and it can even be at 68. It will just make it a little larger. As you know, the bomb, it could be at I think the 80s. The bomb we dropped in Hiroshima, I believe, was only 80% or so nuclear, highly enriched. But Israel has said for a long time that it won't go until just before Iran is ready. And I believe that Iran has been ready. They've already stated publicly that they're ready to change their nuclear doctrine. And I believe that we may see a coordinated East-West assault on international order where the Chinese go against Taiwan with their embargo and Iran breaks out. And of course, it's even possible for Russia to detonate one. Now, you agree that Israel has the ability to use its non-existent weapons to counter this attack, correct?
Well, called bomb in the basement, sort of popularly, it has long been expected, understood, that Israel does have a nuclear weapons capability. Perhaps that has been a strong deterrent up until now. But I would make a note that this Iranian regime that took power, of course, in the jihad coup back in 1979, has always had a nuclear weapons program from the very beginning when Ayatollah Khomeini was still in power and sent a delegation to A.Q. Khan, so-called father of the bomb in Pakistan, to acquire blueprints and their very first centrifuge parts. From that point onwards, until August of 2002, when the NCRI, National Council of Resistance of Iran, exile dissident group, made an announcement simultaneously in Washington, D.C. and Paris at press conferences with the satellite photographs to show that for the first time publicly, the lid was blown off of Iran's nuclear weapons program. The NCRI has shown additional revelations regularly since that date of 2002. And that's part of why I think that Iran, they don't have to put anything together. They've got warheads. All they have to do is put them on the nose cones of their missiles.
That's right. And these missiles are MIRVed up, and it's the Shahab 3, which is based on a Korean Nodong, which is most capable of utilizing the air control guidance that will allow it to detonate 550 feet above. So we are looking at some very, very tense times. I think that 51% of the reason that all our naval ships, and indeed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the head of CENTCOM is sitting in Israel right now, is to stop Israel from taking an action, and only 49% from preventing Iran from attacking the Jewish state. Claire, thank you very, very much. Josh was supposed to be with us, but Claire stood in for him excellently. Thank you, Claire. You have something else?
I would add one quick note, if I might, and that is that when you were citing the detonation of a potential Iranian nuclear weapon that high up in the atmosphere, what comes to mind immediately is the EMP effect, electromagnetic pulse effect, that could be set off by a nuclear explosion in the high atmosphere, 30 to 500 kilometers up, let's say. Of course, this can happen by a coronal mass ejection from the sun too, but here we're talking about the Iranian threat, and that could be an EMP, for which I expect the Israelis are well prepared. But we, here in the United States, we're not. Our electric grid is unsecured.
Now, I should mention that the EMP is a very, very important threat to the United States, and one which I hope to pursue in depth at a later time. I think the detonation itself for the atomic blast would have to be done at 550 meters above the ground, which is the same height that the Hiroshima bomb was dropped. Now, remember, the bomb doesn't go off when it hits the ground. The bomb goes off when the chain reaction is shot through the nose cone. So, Claire, you've got your finger on the pulse with Iran and the potential dangers to our grid. Thanks, and I'll have you back soon. You're welcome to stick around. And now, to bring us back to our electoral madness, in the midst of all this military buildup, we recall our friend Sharon Polsky, our privacy guru, and AI monitor. Remember, Kamala Harris explained that AI was two letters, A and I. Anyway, Sharon, what's the latest electoral threat from the AI world?
Well, with all due respect, I think AI is much more than two simple letters. It wraps an awful lot around. And it's changed so much. Technology advances so quickly, it's hard, certainly for lawmakers, to keep up with laws that by now are outdated. But it was just almost 2 years ago that ChatGPT blasted onto the scene. And within days, millions of people around the world were using it to create lifelike pictures and get questions answered, write papers and legal arguments in minutes. And much of the time, the artificial intelligence tools even got many of the answers and references correct. A lot of the time they didn't, and it's euphemistically called hallucinations. Where I come from, wrong is wrong. Hallucination, no, it's marketing bump. Meantime, it's not just ChatGPT. There's a lot of other generative AI tools that we can now choose from, and really, they are time savers. It's just a matter of figuring out in clear language, which is a challenge for a lot of people, how to craft the right question, the right prompt, the right instruction to get the answer you want. They can, really, AI can be used for very worthwhile purposes, but especially when it comes to elections, worthwhile can be very subjective, and it's being used by some people whose motives might not be entirely altruistic. And with elections in more than 50 countries around the world this year, involving about half of the globe's population, AI is already been, and it is continuing to be used to create ad campaigns, to discredit opponents, to manufacture misinformation and disinformation propaganda to sway public opinion. We're seeing lots of phony text scams asking for donations. And of course, artificial intelligence is a tool. It makes it easy to send out scam texts by the millions. And if you only get just a fraction of a percent of responses, you're cashing in big time. We've already seen videos and memes showing everything from Barack Obama doing cocaine, Vice President Harris and former President Trump, even the Pope pointing guns at people. These things gather a lot of attention and they are convincing. And once you've even looked at the creations, if only to satisfy your curiosity to see just how good a fake can be, the algorithms feed you even more of the same. It becomes an echo chamber, and it's very, very convincing. So although some of it really is easy to recognize as sheer fantasy images, stories that can't possibly be anywhere in the realm of reality, the truth is the fakes often look so real, it is hard to discern deep fakes. And they have already affected elections around the globe, from the US to European countries, everywhere. Maybe it's because a lie told often enough becomes the truth. Psychologists call it the illusion of truth effect. And it's very useful to sway opinions or to get people to believe something even when they know it's not true, or get them to vote for or against something or someone. AI is making real life and election interference a psychedelic phantasmagoria. At this point, I think all it's missing is a hookah-smoking caterpillar to tell us that logic and proportion have not fallen dead. It's going to be some very interesting months ahead.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been aware of is that when Barack Obama won his last election, he talked about his team of behavioral scientists in the basement of the White House who were able to go after different population patterns, shopping patterns, the difference between people eating at McDonald's and the Red Lobster, and try to predict how they would vote in the election and then target those people. Well, this is now being done on steroids because there is grimace capture. Our faces are being captured. Our words are being captured. The TVs are listening. Samsung has confirmed that. The phones are listening, even when we're not using them. That has been confirmed. And that is pushing ads right to us, and ads are manipulation. Sharon, thanks for the extra unhappy insight into AI, into the electoral world. Now, finally, to prep us for this unknown quagmire that is called an election, I want to bring in Marc Zell from Jerusalem. This man may hold history in his two hands if he can mobilize some of the 500,000 Americans living in Israel who are qualified to vote in swing states. No pressure, Marc. Just update us. How are you doing?
Well, I'm barely staying awake after the all-night vigil that we had between Tuesday and Wednesday to listen to the presidential debate. I was on television an hour before during the entire 1.5 hour debate, and then moved to another channel, Channel 14, by the way, the only conservative broadcast channel in Israel, announced today that it surpassed the leading channel in Israel, Channel 12, in the coverage of the presidential debate here. So that's an impressive achievement. Anyway, I'm staying awake. Hopefully I'll be able to talk to you. The situation here is in the voting area. We have launched this in the past, I'd say, week, 3 major digital blasts to approximately 200,000. We call them first generation Americans, out of the 200,000 out of the 500,000. And we were pleased to see that only 10,000 of our messages, which went by SMS and email. Tonight there was a phone call, which I was able to introduce, and only 10,000 of the 200,000 were rejected. And we're now focusing on getting the second generation Americans, those the children of folks like myself to come and register. Before October 7th, that was a difficult task, actually, but October 7th changed all of that. And I can say that many of the second generation Americans were serving in the IDF as reservists, including 3 of my own sons. They have now understood the importance of exercising this extraordinary privilege they have to affect U.S.-Israeli relationships, the future of Israel, the United States, and someone even would say the world. So that's something that's happening now. And we put together a number of video clips featuring folks like Mark Levin, who is recovering from a serious fall, and Jim Jordan, the Judiciary Committee chairman, Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, and I think soon David Friedman will be the former ambassador will giving us a clip to let everybody know here how important it is to vote. In terms of actual voting, it has not started here yet. We won't. The folks here in Israel won't get their absentee ballots until about a week from today. So that's the federal law. And once that happens, we'll be faced with another challenge, and that is how to get all of these hundreds of thousands of ballots back to the election boards in the United States without violating federal and state election laws. It's a monstrous challenge, but we've got some ideas about it, and we're using that, what they call the Yiddish Kopf, the Jewish brain, in order to deal with it. Before I finish, I know I only have 3 minutes. I may have probably exceeded it already, Edwin, but I wanted just to mention one other thing in the kind of foreboding news department. You talked about Iran's nuclear threat. You talked about China and so on. There's a lot of mumblings, that's your expression, around Israel about the imminent breakout of war on our northern front against Lebanon and Hezbollah. I've been on television all week long, and I'm hearing a lot of the Israeli pundits, the security folks, saying that this is imminent. And the defense minister, Gallant, just today indicated that he shifting the weight or focus or concentration of Israeli forces up to the northern border. It has to happen because the constant barrage of Hezbollah drones and missiles on our northern communities from the western Galilee, Nahariya, all the way to the Golan Heights and the Syrian border there has made life impossible. And the Hezbollah is just daily throwing hundreds of missiles at our northern settlements. So anyway, that's what's happening here. Edwin, I hope that answers what you wanted me to respond to, and I'll shoot it back to you.
Well, I got a couple of questions. First of all, how many votes in Pennsylvania are you going to deliver for the Republicans?
Well, we think we have about 15,000 in Pennsylvania. Most of our voters here come from states like New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California. We've made a big point about getting them to vote too, because a lot of them think that those in the blue states, they don't need to vote. But today alone, I registered about 20 from Arizona, and we had another 30 or 40 today from Michigan. Pennsylvania, they're coming in droves, and even in Georgia, we have a number of votes, a few thousand votes. All of those votes, if they actually, these folks, low propensity voters as they're called, actually come and register and vote, could change the outcome or affect the outcome of the election in all those swing states. And those swing states, of course, can determine the outcome of the election nationally in the Electoral College.
Now, are the American Jews in Israel as dopey as the American Jews in the United States?
No.
Are they still asleep?
Well, a lot of them are asleep, but I have to say the interest or the energy that I've seen in the last few weeks has been extraordinary. I've been doing this close to over 30 years, I've never seen anything like this. There's a lot of interest, a lot of concern. And the important thing, Edwin, is that these people are voting 80 to 90% Republican. And that is, of course, important. Everybody here in Israel, with the exception of a very small minority, understands that the fate of Israel is really in the hands of the Republican Party and Donald Trump as president. So that's something which is completely opposite to what's happening to the Jewish community in the United States.
Yeah, the Jewish community in the United States is only about 25% for Trump, and the rest are just racing to catch the train that is going to be launched if Kamala Harris gets into power. Now, Phyllis, who's in Jerusalem and is watching you now, she's assured me she's going to give a falafel sandwich to every one of your guys who votes for Trump. So when you're done,
put her in touch. Oh, that's good. That's the incentive we need. That may be exactly what we need to get them off their duffs.
Well, in Chicago, they gave away, in Philadelphia, they gave away turkeys. But I think just a falafel sandwich with a couple of peppers in there is just enough. Mark, one last thing.
Sure.
Are we going into Lebanon?
I think we are. I think that's what these folks are saying, who have their hand on the pulse of our security establishment. I don't think they have a choice, Edwin. The constant bombardment of Hezbollah infrastructure, weapons depots, and so on in Lebanon has really done nothing to deter the Hezbollah and its allies, really all controlled by Iran, of course, from striking daily against Israel. In their view, and in mine, not that I'm a great expert in this area, is that the only way really to push Hezbollah away from our border and to allow the tens of thousands of evacuees to return to their homes and businesses is to bring ground troops into Lebanon. And that's what I understand is in the works. I have very mixed feelings about this. I've got 3 sons that, as I mentioned, and there are thousands of other young men are going to be called up to put their lives, and women, put their lives on the line in order to make that happen. But in any case, we need it. We can't survive under these circumstances. We need to take this action.
All right, Mark, thank you for your contribution, for your work. Richie, I know you're watching out there. Thank you for the work you're doing. Phyllis, start forking over the falafel sandwiches. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's see just how bad this election is, and let's be blatant. The Democrat Party has an unbroken, uncontradicted history of election abuse and election rigging. According to many historians, the precursor of the Democrat Party was the so-called Democratic Republican Party of colonial times, founded by Jefferson and Madison. Voting then precluded most people living in the country, enslaved and free Negroes, Native Americans, and of course all women. Women were thought by that party to be too childish to handle affairs of state. From about the 1820s, in President Andrew Jackson's day, the modern Democrat Party that we know emerged. It is the longest existing political party in history, and the one responsible for enough genocide, enslavement, disenfranchisement, and bigotry to fill a library of human rights abuses. In the early 19th century, the Democrat Party ensured that blacks and women could not vote, and this party engineered in the years of the 19th century, first decades, the Indian dispossession, the so-called Trail of Tears, so Native Americans could almost never vote. The Republican Party was also known as the Abolitionist Party under Abraham Lincoln. It struggled for equal rights for all those in America. The Democrats were willing to launch a horrible and violent civil war through their military operation known as the Confederacy. This to preserve the so-called states' right to keep blacks, Chinese, Native Americans, and others down. The South lost the war, but came roaring back after the assassination of Lincoln, hundreds of so-called Jim Crow laws were established throughout the South to keep blacks from voting. Poll taxes, literary testing, and brute force. This was a time when the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party, known as the Ku Klux Klan, was lynching blacks from Mississippi to Minnesota, burning blacks alive in jubilant orgies of hate. President Woodrow Wilson, the most racist president in the history of the United States and a strong advocate of the Ku Klux Klan, did nothing to stop these massacres. It was only because so many men were away fighting in a senseless war in Europe called World War I, a war that killed 20 million, a war that not one historian or statesman can rationalize why it was fought. Only because the men were overseas did the women help engineer women's suffrage. The 1920 19th Amendment declared, quote, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." So that brought in millions of women, but still excluded black women and all Native Americans. In World War II, the Democrat Party under Franklin Delano Roosevelt sent 120,000 Americans of Japanese descent into 10 concentration camps far from home, some living in horse barns. Their right to vote became merely theoretical and made impossible for all but a handful. The racist organization, the Native Sons of the Golden West, worked to strip Japanese Americans of their voting rights. America became a majority urban nation only in about 1920. The big cities controlled by Democrats, such as Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and Detroit, were deeply entrenched bastions of voter fraud. Registration was limited, and in Chicago, ward healers and precinct captains kept blacks down and out on the south side during elections, and they kept them out of the north side during elections. Vote fraud was an art form in Chicago. The most lucrative wards in the city were those that included the big cemeteries. Yes, I studied Democratic voter fraud as it was practiced by its master tactician, Mayor Daley, who delivered 2 fake votes per precinct to push Illinois into John F. Kennedy's corner over Nixon delivering the presidency. In Philadelphia, vote fraud was legendary. I have a list of about 50 election fraud convictions just in the past 10 to 20 years, and there are lots that were never prosecuted. In the last midterms, these midterms, Democrats officially and openly spent, get this, $63 million to support the primary runs of the worst, most unelectable Republicans over the most thoughtful and appropriate ones. Then when the bad guys ran, the ones they financed, the Democrats ran vigorous campaigns saying just how bad those candidates were. These were the ones they put into the race. Wow, even Stalin would be amazed by that one. Speaking of Russia, the Democrats complained that Putin keeps his adversaries off the ballot. Yet look what happened this year. Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips was forced off the primary ballot by Democrat kingpins. He was not allowed to run. Marianne Williamson was engineered off the primaries by Democrat kingpins. She was not allowed to run. Green Party candidate Jill Stein, who the Democrats fear, faced lawsuit after lawsuit by Democrats to keep her off the ballot and siphoning off votes from the Democratic ranks. She has just been blocked in Arizona. Ditto for black activist Cornel West. His electors and his signatures were court challenged by rigged state election laws, including in Pennsylvania, that were created just for his candidacy. Donald Trump had to fight to stay on the ballot in numerous states because of so many actions to keep him off the ballot. And in Illinois, the Democrats actually got a traffic court judge in Chicago. Yes, a traffic court judge to throw Trump off the ballot until that was reversed unanimously by the Supreme Court. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said he was sued by the Democrats so often to keep him off the ballot, he actually gave up and joined the Trump campaign. Now, the same Democratic secretaries of state who fought to keep Kennedy off the ballot are now fighting to keep him on the ballot, to keep voters confused. And of course, when it became obvious to the Democratic wire pullers that Sleepy Joe was falling 5 and 10 and 15 points behind, they said, the heck with the rigged election anyway. And they just took Kamala Harris, who never got a primary vote, Kamala Harris, who did not run in any primary, and they coronated her the new candidate. They forced Joe off the ballot. When it comes to elections, the Republicans are rank amateurs and the Democrats seasoned professionals. The Republicans are crybabies playing checkers, and the Democrats are stealthy grand chess masters with holograms and lasers thrown in. I have so much more to say. I have to leave 99.9% out, so I'm going to yield to one of our best election observers. I'm going to talk to Juda Engelmayer. Josh Block could not make it, and I'm going to ask him in plain words, Judah, what happens if one side wins and the other side is unhappy, and vice versa?
Well, first of all, thank you for that long introduction. The only thing I heard was Sharon Polsky quoting White Rabbit by Grace Slick. So I'm impressed with that. No one else heard that. No one else got that. I'm very impressed with it. What I think is going to happen is that you're going to have half America unhappy with either decision, and I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know if we're looking at civil war. I don't know if we're looking at real violent outbreaks. I think that the country is so divided, and the Democrats aren't addressing it. They complain. They think it's all about Donald Trump and he's a bad guy. They don't realize half the country feels that way, and they don't seem to care. You're absolutely right. The Democrats understand electioneering. They understand ballot harvesting. They understand backing trucks up after the ballots close and throwing ballots in where they're needed. The Republicans, I'm a little surprised and saddened that after all these years, they haven't figured out how to do it themselves. It's a sad thing. I do think we're going to have an issue with the country accepting Kamala Harris winning, and I think that you'll have Trump not accepting it again, fighting it again. I don't think there'll be another January 6th, and I hope that he's learned his lesson from that, and the people involved have learned their lesson from that. There are other ways of protesting. That might not be the right way. It's probably not the right way. But I think that if Trump wins, you're going to have a line of progressives and lefties who are angry and upset too. But they're not going to do the same thing. They're not going to get angry the same way. They'll get angry a different way. They'll have strikes. They'll have stop workages. They'll block highways. They'll protest. They'll scream. They'll yell. You see it with the Palestinian protests. That's what they do. They just block everyday people from getting to work. They block the operations from happening. They block traffic. That's pretty much what we're looking at on that side. That's what I see. It's not going to be nice. It's going to be ugly for a while, and it's going to be accepting either side. Either way is going to be a very difficult thing, and I really hope the election goes off without a hitch, but I don't suspect that's going to happen. I think we have a huge issue on our hands going forward, and these two candidates are probably not the right ones for our country. We need fresh new blood who've not been around for a while, who've not been there to mold the system, and that we're not getting for at least another 4 years, I hope. I mean, I hope we get it sooner. I don't have confidence in the election system. I'm not saying that there's cheating in the elections. I just think that the way the votes come out and the way the voter harvesting works yields to the Democrats almost always.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with that. Josh is not here to give us his insights, but we have a ton of questions that are going to allow us to fill in for his not being here. The first one comes from the watch party in the Villages. Now, you know where the Villages is, right, Judah?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so does Ken. So, and probably Claire knows where the Villages is.
It's called Florida.
All right. So the question is, what did you think of the debate? Now, I've got like 5 people who asked me the same question. What did I think of the debate? So I'll tell you what I think. I think that she was polished, that Kamala was polished, organized, vague, evasive. She didn't answer questions, but she answered them in a way that baited Trump. Trump took the bait. He was not disciplined, but he delivered a forceful message. And what I'm feeling now is what Senator Rubio said, that the opinions of the analyst class, the people like you, Judah, the people like Claire, the people like me, the people like Josh, is not really relevant. It's not relevant because we're talking about participles and they're talking about policies and personality. And right now, the country is scared. There are two types of scare going on. One is this hysterical scare that Donald Trump is going to do something crazy to suspend the Constitution. These people are crazy. And on the countervailing side is the scare that we're going to lose the country. We're going to lose Israel. She's going to make a show Block and the people, the Jew-hating coterie that's standing with her that you very well know could be appointed. And the fact that Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, who is associated with Louis Farrakhan, he may become Attorney General. So now he got a fair guy. He used to call himself ex-Ellison, and they're just very afraid, and they're looking for a forceful guy to come in and clean it up. So while you and I are busy criticizing Trump for not being prepared, for taking the bait, I think the average person who is swayable saw two things. One, a forceful guy with policies they understand, a woman who refused to answer questions, and a woman who refused to define herself and her policies. What do you say?
I think you're absolutely right about that, but I also know that this debate was not geared for you and me. It was not geared for the class of people who pay attention to politics. It was geared for the people who don't know who they're voting for and looking to decide and looking for somebody who looks like a beacon of presidency, of presidentialness to them. I think the undecideds did not believe her. They completely, and when we've seen that, even the New York Times reported that. But I think that there are contingents of the country that even though that they want Donald Trump's policies, they wish he can control himself. They wish he can contain himself. However, what it does also show is that he's straight. He is brutally honest with his opinions. You know where he stands on everything. He doesn't hide it. He doesn't mince it. And he doesn't know how to. And she was lying about everything. And unfortunately, the moderators weren't calling her out on, only calling him on. But she looked like she can morph into presidential mode. He looks like he can get baited very easily. And I think for some of the undecideds, some of the uncertains, it wasn't a good look. But I don't think this was geared for us. I don't think that it changed any minds on people who knew what side of the aisle they were voting on already.
All right, Mark, let me bring you back in. What's your news from the Wall Street Journal about Trump and the debates?
Yeah, I just read. I came across my feed that they're reporting that Trump has stated that he's not going to agree to another debate. There was a big question about that because Kamala Harris, feeling her oats after the presidential debate this week, said for the first time that she's open to the possibility of another debate. He apparently has just shut down that possibility. We can discuss that if you have time.
Well, Judah, what about the role of the media? ABC was just betrayed their mission. First, they said the mics are going to be off. And then whenever Trump tried to mumble something, they turned on his mic to make him look bad. And plus, they fact-checked him, but they never fact-checked her. Isn't that the case?
Well, is anyone surprised? It's ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN. Conventional media is yielding towards the Democrats. You see it on all the shows and all the programming. You see it with all the anchors. I don't know why we expect anything different. The problem I have is that Trump didn't expect anything different either. And he was prepared, and he was told, and he was asked, begged not to take the bait and just to sit there and smile and just answer, pivot and answer questions he wanted to, but he took the bait, and he can't resist. And I think not doing the debate is probably wise. He knows himself. He can't control himself.
And here's another thing. They kept telling, don't get personal. No personal attacks. That's all she did. From
That's all she did.
She just did personal. And
Yes.
she lied continuously.
She lied a lot, and she didn't get checked on it, and the media did allow her, and that's a big problem. But Trump and the Republicans knew that and expected that, and that's they should, if they're not that prepared. The question that moderates can ask is that if he's not prepared for what he already knew was going to happen, how is he prepared to face the world? The world as it is right now, and other world leaders. Is he going to say he's not prepared either? You can't blame people once he's president.
I like to say, Edwin, that I don't agree here with this condemnation of Donald Trump. He was ambushed, repeatedly with this. It was basically 3 against 1. And under those circumstances, he did have his weaker moments. But as a whole, and particularly his closing, really did drill home a number of key points during the debate quite effectively. And particularly, where he made clear to the public that Kamala Harris is the alter ego of Joe Biden and is actually worse, and which she's trying to distinguish herself from that, make herself look like more moderate. That didn't work. I think Trump really stuck that to her, and that also is reflected in some of these post-debate snap polls. CNN gave Harris 63% victory, but there were 2 other significant polls in which close to or over 200,000 participants were polled, and they gave the debate to Trump 60-30, 60-40. So I'm not sure, and a lot of the pundits are also saying now that the debate did not change the situation of the candidates in any significant way. We'll know shortly if that's true, but I wouldn't pan him so much. He did an okay job considering.
I would argue with you on the one thing. I don't pan him. I want him to win, and I make no secrets about that. But he's a grown adult, and I can deal with 3 people beating me up, and I know how not to take debate. I know how to pivot and respond.
Did you say he was a grown adult?
Yeah. Yes. In any event, I keep on wishing he wouldn't take the bait. I keep wishing he would just pivot and answer the questions he needs to answer, and make the comments and policy statements he needs to make, or make the distinction between him and Kamala and her administration. I wish he wouldn't be so easily baited like that. I just wish. That's all.
All right, I'm going to ask Claire about the 4 major lies that Kamala told that she was not called out on. So, Claire, first, she claimed that about the bloodbath. Now, Eve, our producer, put up on a previous show that this bloodbath comment was just rebutting a Chinese electric vehicle guy who had said, oh, it'll be a bloodbath when our Mexican plants bring in all of these cars into the United States without a tariff. And no one fact-checked her. They know it's a lie. ABC knows it's a lie. Eve knows it's a lie. My viewers know it's a lie, and yet she repeated it. What do you know in 20 seconds about this word bloodbath?
Yeah, well, you're right, Ed. I mean, obviously, the comment that President Trump made about bloodbath was totally in the context of commerce, trade, automobiles. And what he was speaking of there is that if these auto plants are allowed to be built in Mexico to produce Chinese electric vehicles and then to ship them across our border into the United States, that would decimate the American auto industry. That's what he was talking about.
And the word bloodbath was used first by this Chinese executive. Now let's go to this second lie about Project 2025. Which I think it's 900 pages long. She's never read it. He's never read it. You've never read it. I've never read it. But the one thing he did say repeatedly is, I will have nothing to do with it. He actually said, I condemn it as extremism. Some, if not a bunch, of the authors of this were at one time connected to his circles and his administration. But he has made it clear he's not part of it. He's not going to be part of it, and it will not be implemented. You know that. The media knows it. The Democrats know it. The ABC fact checkers know it. I know it. The producers of this show know it. And they have put those clips on, where those video clips on our show notes. Why do you think Kamala felt comfortable in repeating this lie?
Because she knows that there are a whole bunch of low information voters out there who would not only not read the whole thing, it's enormous, you're right, but not even know what it's about. And, oh, that sounds about right. And they would swallow it. The truth is that Project 25 was a project of the very conservative Heritage Foundation, headquarters up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. It was prepared, produced by Heritage without input from either President Trump or his campaign. It only was published after it was finished, and that's when Trump and all the rest of us had the chance to see it. But it contains a lot of elements that really are straight out of the Trump agenda, policy agenda. He's denouncing and distancing himself from the entire thing. But the truth is that a lot that's in it are things that many conservatives and the Trump campaign also would support. But the point here is that the Harris-Walz campaign is trying to paint the Trump campaign with a total falsehood that she and they know is false, but many Americans do not.
And the third major fib that she told is that Donald Trump would sign a national bill outlawing abortion under any circumstances. He has said no. He has repeatedly said no. He's vocally said no. You, Claire, know it's no. I know it's no. I gave that site for Eve to put on our show notes. The producers knew it was false, yet they never corrected her or fetched.
No, of course not. It's a convenient talking point because aside from the abortion issue, truth be told, the Democrat Party has just about nothing else to run on. None of its other policies, be it the border, be it law and order and crime, be it immigration flooding, illegal aliens flooding our communities, be it international affairs, you name it, the economy above all, it's a disaster. They can't talk about any of that. So they seize upon abortion, again, relying on low information. I call them amygdala people because what they do is they count on such people to bypass the frontal cortex and go straight to the limbic system. But in fact, what Donald Trump, I think, needs to repeat often in his speeches and rallies and all that is that with the Dobbs decision of this year, the Supreme Court of the United States turned the Roe versus Wade decision from back in 1972 out of law and sent it back to the individual states to regulate abortion as the people of those states decide to do.
That's called community control of medical standards. Yeah. That is the fact in virtually all of medical care.
Now, the president has absolutely zero authority. The federal government has absolutely zero authority from this point onwards to have anything to do with abortion. He needs to repeat that.
He needs to repeat it over and over again. Now, Judah, if you're still with us,
I'm with you.
Are you still with us?
I am.
Where are you walking?
Now I'm on 8th Avenue.
8th Avenue, good. All right. So fourth of these lies that she told that was not checked was this Charlottesville lie, that there were good people on both sides, that even the left-leaning Snopes.com said was...
It's been validly debunked, but the problem is it's been said so many times. Biden used it in his talking points as to why he answered the race in the first place. Just to what the other speaker just said plainly, that the average voter, the average American doesn't really know the facts, no details. They hear these sound bites and they believe it. So even though you know it's been debunked, I know it's been debunked, I know it's not true, say it in the hope that the people who haven't decided who to vote for are going to decide based on things like that.
Yeah,
just keep on lying. Keep on lying.
And the guy who perfected that, his name was Joseph Goebbels, who said if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the
It
truth.
becomes true,
Now,
and that's what they're banking on. That's what they're banking on.
Sharon, how closely are the people in Canada, crumbling as it is, watching the American race? And what do you think very quickly will be the impact of either Trump or Kamala winning the race?
Canadian media typically, and this is historically, pays more attention to what goes on in the United States than it does give airtime to what goes on in Canada. It's a great distraction and deflection maneuver. Canadians are very concerned of what's going on because our current Prime Minister has spent an awful lot of time making less than complimentary remarks about President Trump as he then was. He's very enamored with Kamala Harris. Canadians, though, are fearful because the economic impact both ways, regardless which candidate wins, is going to be profound in Canada. We're looking forward with some trepidation to tariffs, import taxes, duties, fees, levies. Sure, Canada will be able to complain about it and lodge investigatory complaints with the Free Trade Commission, if you will, USMCA, CUSMA. But that takes years and years to come to some resolution. And in the meantime, our tenuous economy, it's on pretty shaky ground right now. It's going to have massive implications. So, yeah, we're watching with great interest. And, of course, last time with the January 6th insurrection, and our Prime Minister the day after said, because that had been organized online and it's a threat to democracy, we have to protect democracy in Canada. We can't allow something like that to happen here. So we will monitor all online activity, all content, all conversation, all commentary to protect democracy and Canadian. It's Orwellian, but it's seizing on an opportunity. And what's the old saying? Never let a good crisis go to waste.
All right. Well, you've said it well. We're out of time, everybody. I want to apologize that our good friend Josh, one of our ballot boys, was in an airport trying to get off an airplane and just couldn't make it. But he'll be back the next time around. Hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 1 minute away. But first, I want to thank my very knowledgeable guests who shared their wisdom. Contributing editor Sharon Polsky in Calgary, Canada, plus Marc Zell in Israel. Thank you, Richie, for getting them online. Clare Lopez in Virginia, and of course, the Ballot Boys. Josh Block, who didn't show up because he was on an airplane, and Juda Engelmayer, normally from Jersey, but who was walking the streets of New York. I also thank my talented international crew, including John in Japan, Luca in Serbia, Eduardo in Argentina, Lance in Detroit, Nick in London, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. My team, each of them, is comprised of very dedicated people. I and we all owe them. I'll see everyone back here 2 weeks from now at 3 p.m. Eastern. You want to be a friend of The Edwin Black Show? Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Watch my website for events. Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple, Google Books, Audible.com, or Kobo platform in 190 countries across this roiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 225 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust and Financing the Flames. You want an autographed copy? Hit my redesigned website, very nice now, edwinblack.com, and click books. Thank you, Wes. I know you're watching. Get access alerts to participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show in about a month, maybe 3.5 weeks, and prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show and click the notification button like tens of thousands of others have. You will love them. We put new ones up each week, produced by my bold international team. Follow me at Edwin Black Book on X as well as Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. Daydreamers, open your eyes to see the nightmare coming your way. I'm zooming out, folks, from our nation's capital. Bless you all.